If you are a parent in Australia with a child in childcare, what I am about to share could put an extra $1,460 back in your pocket this year. But here is the catch: unless you understand exactly what changed on the 5th of January 2026, and more importantly, what you need to do in the next few days, you might miss out entirely. I am talking about young families earning between $80,000 and $100,000, stay-at-home parents looking to re-enter the workforce, mothers in between jobs, and anyone who has ever felt trapped by the old childcare rules. This isn't just another policy tweak. This is the biggest shift in childcare accessibility in a decade, and thousands of families are already being caught off guard because they assume the system will automatically adjust. It won't. So if you want to know how to claim what is rightfully yours, stay with me for the next few minutes. This could be the most valuable information you hear all month. Let me start with the question everyone's asking: does the removal of the activity test mean I automatically get subsidized childcare now? The surface answer is yes. From the 5th of January 2026, the activity test, the requirement that forced you to prove you were working, studying, or volunteering to access government-subsidized childcare, has been officially abolished. But here is where it gets tricky. Just because the rule is gone doesn't mean your account reflects it. The system doesn't update itself. You need to manually confirm your eligibility through myGov, or you'll continue being charged under the old structure. And I've seen cases where families assumed everything was automatic, only to discover weeks later they'd been overpaying by hundreds of dollars. So yes, the activity test is gone. But no, you are not in the clear until you take action. Now let's talk about the first critical threshold most people don't know exists: the 3-day guarantee. Under the new policy, every family, regardless of employment status, is entitled to a minimum of 3 subsidized childcare days per week. Sounds straightforward, right? But here is what they don't tell you up front. If you were previously receiving childcare under the old activity test rules, your subsidy hours were calculated based on your reported activity hours. Let's say you were working 20 hours a week, so you got subsidy for roughly 20 hours of care. Now, even if you stop working entirely, you are still guaranteed subsidy for at least 3 full days. That is approximately 30 hours per week. For many families, this actually represents an increase in subsidized hours, even if their income or work status hasn't changed. But if you don't log into myGov and update your activity status to reflect the new rules, the system will keep calculating your subsidy based on outdated information. You could be leaving money on the table every single fortnight without even realizing it. But the real game changer is in how this affects families in that critical income band, $80,000 to $100,000. This is where the numbers get really interesting. Under the old system, if you were a stay-at-home parent or between jobs, you had 0 activity hours, which meant 0 subsidized childcare, unless you could prove you were actively job hunting or studying. That forced thousands of parents, especially mothers, into an impossible position. They couldn't look for work because they had no childcare, but they couldn't get childcare because they weren't working. It was a vicious cycle. Now, with the activity test gone, a family earning $90,000 with 1 child in care 3 days a week is looking at an average saving of $1,460 per year. That is not a small amount. That is a family holiday. That is several months of groceries. That is breathing room. But here is the critical detail: this saving only applies if your childcare provider has updated their records and if you've confirmed your new entitlement through the system. The government has sent out notifications, but let's be honest, how many of us actually read every Services Australia email? If you are in this income bracket and you haven't checked your myGov account since early January, you need to do that today. Now, let's get into the 3 family types that benefit the most from this change, because understanding where you fit will determine exactly how you should act. First, mothers or fathers currently in between jobs. Maybe you were made redundant, maybe you left a toxic workplace, maybe you are just taking a career break. Under the old rules, you had a very narrow window, usually around 12 weeks, where you could access subsidized care while job hunting. After that, if you hadn't found work, your subsidy dropped to 0. Now, that pressure is gone. You can take the time you need to find the right role, not just any role, while still keeping your child in their familiar care environment. The psychological relief alone is massive, but financially it means you are not forced into accepting underpaid or unsuitable work just to keep childcare access. Second, full-time homemakers who want flexibility. There is a huge cohort of parents, often mothers, who chose to stay home but occasionally need care for appointments, mental health days, or even just to maintain their own identity outside of parenting. Previously, accessing even 1 day of subsidized care required proving activity hours. Now, those 3 days are yours, no questions asked. And third, parents transitioning careers or starting businesses. If you are retraining, studying online, or building a startup, your income might be irregular or non-existent in the early stages. The old system penalized that ambition, the new system supports it. You can now invest in your future without sacrificing your child's care or your family's financial stability. But here is the part that is tripping people up, and it is critical. You understand this. The system relies on your declared activity status, and that status is no longer automatically linked to employment. What does that mean in practice? It means the government is no longer cross-checking your childcare subsidy against your employer's payroll data in real time. Instead, they're trusting you to accurately report your circumstances. Now, that might sound like a free pass, but it is actually a responsibility. If your circumstances change, if you start working more hours, if your income increases significantly, you are required to update your details. Failure to do so isn't just an administrative hiccup. It is considered non-compliance, and it can result in debt recovery. I've seen families hit with bills for thousands of dollars because they didn't update their status when they went from casual to full-time work. The system gave them more subsidy than they were entitled to, and then clawed it all back months later. So while the activity test is gone, the obligation to keep your information current is stronger than ever. Now let's talk about something most people don't even think about until it is too late. What happens if you are overseas or planning extended travel? The removal of the activity test doesn't change the residency requirements for childcare subsidy. You and your child must be Australian residents, living in Australia. If you take your family overseas for an extended period, even if it is for a valid reason like caring for a sick relative, your childcare subsidy can be suspended. And here is the kicker. Unlike some other payments, there is no automatic reinstatement when you return. You have to reapply, and that process can take weeks. During that time, you are paying full childcare fees out of pocket. I've seen families return from a 2-month trip and face a $4,000 childcare bill because they didn't notify Services Australia before they left and didn't understand the re-entry process. The lesson here is simple. If you are planning to be out of the country for more than 6 weeks, contact Services Australia before you go. Get it in writing. Understand exactly what you need to do to maintain or reinstate your subsidy. And while we're on the topic of things that can disrupt your subsidy, let's talk about the reverse process. What happens if you want to increase your childcare days beyond the guaranteed 3? This is a question I get constantly. The answer is yes, you can. The 3-day guarantee is a minimum, not a maximum. If you need 4 or 5 days of care, you can still access subsidy for those additional days, but the rate of subsidy will depend on your income and your activity level. So if you are working or studying more, you'll likely qualify for higher subsidy on those extra days. But if you are not, you'll still get subsidy, just at a lower rate. The key is that you need to apply for those additional days through your childcare provider and update your activity details in myGov. It is not automatic. And if your provider isn't aware of the new rules, they might tell you you are not eligible, which is incorrect. Know your rights. The policy is clear. Every family gets 3 days minimum, and additional days are available based on activity and income, not just employment. Now here is something that is causing a lot of confusion, the interaction between this new policy and other family payments. Specifically, Family Tax Benefit Part A and Part B. Some parents are worried that accessing more childcare subsidy will reduce their FTB payments. Let me clear this up. Your childcare subsidy and your family tax benefit are calculated separately. Accessing the 3-day childcare guarantee will not reduce your FTB. However, if your income changes, that can affect both payments. So if you start working more and earning more, yes, your FTB might reduce, but that is due to your income change, not because you are using childcare. The two systems are linked by income, not by each other. But here is where it gets messy. If you don't update your income estimate accurately, you could end up with an overpayment in one or both systems, and then you are dealing with debt recovery from multiple programs at once. The safest approach is to update your income estimate every time your circumstances change, even if it is just a small shift. And let's talk about one of the most overlooked consequences of not staying on top of this, the loss of ancillary benefits. When your childcare subsidy is active and correctly processed, it often unlocks access to other support programs. Some states offer additional cost of living rebates for families with children in approved care. Some local councils provide discounted services or priority access to programs. If your childcare subsidy lapses or is incorrectly recorded, you might lose access to these secondary benefits without even knowing they existed. I've spoken to families who missed out on a $500 state government rebate simply because their childcare subsidy had a processing error that took 3 months to fix. By the time it was corrected, the rebate application period had closed. These aren't huge amounts individually, but they add up, and they're often tied to narrow eligibility windows. So here is what you absolutely must do, and I mean this week, not next month. Log into your myGov account. Go to your Centrelink services. Find the section on childcare subsidy. Check that your activity status is listed as current and that it reflects the new rules. If you see any reference to the old activity test or if your subsidy hours seem frozen at pre-January levels, you need to call Services Australia immediately. Don't wait for a letter, don't assume it will fix itself. The hold times are long, I know, but this is worth it. When you get through, ask them explicitly, has my account been updated to reflect the removal of the activity test as of the 5th of January 2026? Get a reference number for that call. If they say yes, ask them to confirm your current subsidy entitlement in writing. If they say no, ask them to process the update while you are on the line. Let me finish with this. The removal of the activity test isn't just about money. It is about choice. It is about not being forced into work you don't want or care arrangements that don't suit your family just to tick a bureaucratic box. It is about recognizing that parenting itself is work and that every family deserves access to quality early education regardless of employment status. But the system only works if you engage with it. The government has opened the door, but you have to walk through it. If this video helped you understand what you need to do, hit that like button and share it with every parent you know. Drop a comment if you've already updated your myGov and let me know how it went. And if you want more breakdowns of policies that actually affect your daily life, subscribe, because I am here every week making sure you don't get caught off guard. This is your money, this is your family's future. Don't leave it on the table.